Alright, so by the time we get to this point, you've seen all the little intro stuff running around here, carrying in a few T-posts, some wire, straw bales, and you saw this guy. We're doing another segment here of At Home in the Gardens with Glenn, but this isn't just Glenn. This is Joel. We go back all the way to college, which we're not going to say when and where. And all that
30
stuff.
years ago.
Thank goodness there wasn't digital devices back then to record everything that happens.
Yeah.
But in this whole big picture of rejuvenating the garden and trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do, when did the first Straw Bale Garden book come out?
2013. Well, I did a self-published version in like 2009, but my first published book was 2015.
And then you probably spoke at MNLA at the Green Expo early on?
1,800 presentations I've done, so I don't remember exactly where it went.
Early on, there was one. I bought the book because it was Joel's book. I've thumbed it 100 times, and to this day, I have not done Straw Bale Garden yet. But I've always looked at it, I've always gone, that's really, really a good idea. Watched a little bit more in this whole, being at home, and you've watched the first couple of videos. One video that Joel has out is Don't Work Like a Dog. Speaking of dogs, there he is, Jackson the garden dog. And all of that, getting my traditional beds ready. I really wanted to give this a go and try it, so what better way than to reach out to Joel and say, hey, can you come down, give a few pointers, and
absolutely. I'm excited about it.
So
yeah, we'll give everybody sort of a good direction, get you all started off in the right direction, and Glenn, I'm sure we'll do some follow-ups throughout his season of how his garden progresses. But today, really, it's about setup. So we picked a spot in Glenn's garden. He's going to have a pathway that runs down the middle here. So you want to stay off the pathway, and he's got 12 bales. So what we decided we're going to do is 4 rows of 3 bales in each row, and then we'll separate those by about 4 or 5 feet between the rows. So it's going to kind of be in this section of the garden here. Excellent. So we're going to put a post in the end of each row of 3 bales, and you can follow along here as we get the bales set up and oriented. It doesn't really matter what's underneath because that's not really important. Between the bales, you can either put down landscape fabric or mulch or something to keep weeds and stuff from growing, or you can just keep it sprayed during the summer if you don't want any grass or weeds or anything between your rows of bales. But the bales themselves won't have any weeds in them, we hope. As long as there's no leftover oats or wheat seeds in the bales of straw, you won't have any problems with that kind of stuff. So follow along as we get things set up.
Perfect. We're going to do that.
All right. We'll pick the edge for the first row here. See how 3 fit right here. We're going to put the cut side of the bales up. So for any farm kid out there, there's a cut side and a folded side on every bale. And we want to keep the cut side up because it's much easier to get water and fertilizer to penetrate on that side. How does this look for spacing on the end here? It looks like we've missed the bale with your pathway. Is that pretty good? That looks pretty good. And that looks like good spacing between those two.
Yeah, I might just push it out just another
couple inches.
Yep.
Push it down here. How's that?
Perfect.
Upside down here. Not that it makes a huge difference, but you will see it's much easier when you put water on to get it to penetrate on this side than it is on the folded side.
There you go.
And that looks like space between here. We need at least 4 feet, so let's take a look here. Yep, we got 4 feet, 2-3 inches. Yep. Looks like enough space here. Let's check this out. 4, yep, that's about right. Are we gonna be too close to that new little rhubarb we got planted there?
He can get moved later. So I'm learning something new. We're always learning something new. What he had mentioned, there's a side that's cut. You can really see it compared to what's folded. That's new to me.
Well, you learn when you're a kid going riding on a baling rack, baling hay, or particularly hay because it's stiffer. When you take it off the baler, if you bounce that cut side against your leg, especially if you have shorts on, Most people don't bale hay with shorts, but even through jeans,
Right.
the pokey side, the cut side pokes through your jeans and you have a rash before lunch. Where if you bounce the folded side off of your knee when you pull it off the baler, that doesn't happen. So you learn as a kid, you learn in a hurry. What's the cut side and what's the folded side of every bale? All right, so that was 90 seconds of setup, and that's really the physical work for a straw bale garden. We're gonna pound in some posts. I guess that's a little bit of work. So once that setup is done, there's really not a lot of difficult physical labor left with straw bale gardening, which is why it's so appealing for quote-unquote seniors, well-seasoned gardeners who've been around for a while and maybe can't do the heavy lifting and the physical digging and soil preparation work that traditional gardening methods require. Once this is set up and in place, the rest of the year basically you're going to need pruning shears. Woo! And that it may be a planting trowel, and that's about it. So let's get these posts pounded in. We're going to put one at each end.
All right, you bring them, I'll pound them.
Make sure we're not on top of any water lines. We're going to put them so that the nubby side of the post is facing out. So squeeze them in nice and tight to the end of the bale. A little bit of an angle. We'll pop them down. You want to get them so they're at least the flange is under the ground. Because the little flange at the bottom really is where the stability comes in. To hold the post. The vine can always add height to these. If tomatoes get higher than this, you might need to add some little sticks along the edge and add some wires up a little bit higher as well. So now you might be asking what the purpose of the posts are. Really, this is to create a trellis. We're going to run wire back and forth between these posts. And this is for cucumber vines and squash vines and tomato vines and peas and beans and anything that has a vine on it to climb up and keep that foliage up off of the ground. That's important to get good air circulation because, as we all know, air circulation, dry leaves on vegetable plants prevent disease.
Right.
If you have constantly moist, humid, wet leaves, you're going to get a spread of fungal disease, bacterial spores, things like that, that spread quickly throughout a vegetable garden in particular. So it's really a cultural shift in the vegetable gardening practice to try to keep all of your foliage from your plants up off the ground. You're going to get tomatoes that'll want to kind of bend over and go towards the ground. We're going to cut those off as the tomatoes start to come up out of the bales and try to guide them up on these wires. I call it the Florida weave. We kind of weave the tomatoes in and out of the wires. And Glenn's going to find out that these posts are going to end up being too short. So he's going to have to wire a stick or something next to here to get it up 6 or 7 feet.
Well, that's
wire it out here.
That's an opportunity for an art project, actually.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
and then something that goes across, we like to, at the top of our posts, Glenn, we like to run just a piece of wood. So if you got a 2x4, whatever, we can run across the top. I don't know if you got something around here we could do a sample.
Today I might not. I actually have a little log yard with a couple pieces of wood in it.
Yeah, that would work great. Yeah, that would work. One of those, just a rough cut piece would work great. It can be, 2x2, 2x6, 2x4, whatever you got. And then what we do is on the end of that 2x4, we're going to cut a little notch with our saw, just make a little curve, and that'll slide right over the tongue of our post. And that'll keep our posts from bending together towards each other.
Perfect.
So then when we run wires across, we can tighten those up nice and tight, and that'll keep our posts nice and stable. The top part here will stay, that'll be fine because it'll be leveraged from down below. So we'll just put a piece of wood up next to it here and wire that together. But we'll let Glenn finish that stuff up later. We'll put 1 or 2 wires on here just to give people an idea, kind of a look of what it's going to look like. Obviously, his plants aren't growing yet. He doesn't need the wires in place today. But we're going to start the conditioning part of the project. Now,
absolutely.
With straw bale gardening, Glenn, the important thing that people need to understand is you can't plant right into a raw bale of straw.
Correct.
If you do that, you're going to come back in a week, your tomatoes will be dead. Because what happens is there's bacteria already in these bales. And those bacteria's natural instinct is to colonize whatever fresh organic material they're in. But they need two things to colonize. They need moisture.
Correct.
You gotta get the bales wet, and they need a source of food, which for them is gonna be nitrogen. So we're gonna add some fertilizer, which has nitrogen. You can do this organically. I've got a organic blood meal-based product called Bale Buster. We also have a Bale Buster version that's an NPK, refined fertilizer product. That's gonna feed the bacteria. Those bacteria are quickly gonna replicate, reproduce. Now what's cool about bacteria, when it reproduces, is it doesn't lay eggs and it doesn't have babies. When bacteria reproduces, it looks like a log under a microscope. You gotta have a 400 power microscope to see it. So you won't see this happening, but you gotta trust me. The bacteria are gonna grow, they're gonna look like a little log under a microscope. And then when they get to a certain size, they split in half in the middle. And during that splitting process, you'll see the outer part of their cell wall will pinch, and then they start to vibrate back and forth. And right before they split apart and one becomes two, they vibrate for 15, 20, 30 seconds. Boom, now they split apart, now you got two bacteria. If the conditions are right, it's a nice warm day, there's lots of moisture, and there's nitrogen present, those bacteria will be ready to split again within 15 minutes. So each of those two now becomes two more. So that process is exponential. It happens very rapidly. And every time those bacteria are vibrating, they're generating heat from friction. And that heat is what you'll feel down in the bales. That's whenever you feel hot.
I was just going to say,
compost.
If you've ever gone, my compost pile's over there, which all of you know that. But if you've ever gone into the compost pile and you're like, oh, wow, this is really warm.
Yep. That's what it's coming from. It's vibrating, dancing bacteria inside of there. Reproducing bacteria, actually, inside of that
party in the garden.
Inside of that compost pile. So people talk about, I get that comment a lot, do I have to worry about my bales starting on fire? Because I've heard that fires can start. No, you don't have to worry about that, because in this situation, there's no compression. You know, if you had a huge stack of bales, 50 high, or a huge pile of wet hay piled up. Now, interior to that pile, it's not going to get oxygen. And then those bacteria become anaerobic bacteria. It's a different type of bacteria. And those actually can vibrate so fast that they'll generate up to 200, 205 degrees. And that can smolder and that can start a flame, given the right conditions. Talk to somebody who's had a silage pile start on fire, or a barn start on fire because of wet hay in the barn. It's got all it needs. It's got moisture, it's got bacteria, and it's got a food source, because hay has a lot of nitrogen in it.
Correct.
Straw doesn't have natural nitrogen, and we're very close. The furthest away from oxygen you'll ever be is maybe 10 inches in the interior of a bale. So the bacteria stay very aerobic. If your bales ever smell like sewer smell, that means that they've kind of shifted to anaerobic bacteria. It might be too wet inside the bales. We never want the bales to be so wet that if you were to pull a handful of straw out of the bale and wring it like a washcloth, you get water that gushes out. That's too wet. We just want it to be moist. So if you were to wring that out, we want one drip of water to come out. So it's kind of a magical balance. And we're really going to soak these bales today when we're putting on our first application. And it's going to take, 3, 4, 5 gallons per bale to get these nice and saturated. Excellent. But after that, all we're going to do is 1 gallon per day. And what's ideal is if you have some 5-gallon pails, we can fill a 5-gallon pail with water today and then use it tomorrow. That's what I call warmed water. Correct. People will carry water from the kitchen. You don't need hot water. You just need water that's not 40 degrees coming out of your garden hose early in the spring. The ground is still cold, so all the pipes are cold. So warmed water is just water in a pail that you put in a pail yesterday. That's warmed water. So today we're going to use cold water out of the hose just to get these bales saturated and get them going. And then just a gallon of water, or even not even a gallon, per bale per day. There'll be some fertilizer that will accumulate on top of the bales. That's not a concern at all. You don't need to dissolve it all into the bale. So that's a common question that new gardeners will have.
There's approximately 12 days to condition the bales.
Right, to get them ready to plant. Yep.
To get ready to plant. We'll point out now, we've mentioned it earlier, there's links all over. Joel has an awesome Facebook page. He also has an awesome website.
Strawbale Garden Club.
StrawbaleGardenClub.com.
Yep.
So check that out. We'll also refer to the YouTube channel, so there'll be a link. It's funny, I always get it's to the left now. link up there. I'll put it in here again up to his channel. Actually, what I'll do, yeah, I'll do the channel here. We'll do to a video in a bit. And look for his book, because that has the steps in there, and it works out real easy. Because if you're like me, by the time tomorrow gets here, I'm like, did I put a gallon on? Is it day 2, 3, or 4?
We have a chart, so it makes it really easy.
A real easy chart. So find the book, get the book, follow his stuff, and we'll keep track of how to condition these bales, and we'll follow through with that on the next video here.
Yeah, we got some great stuff on our website where people can get an email a day, and it walks them through the conditioning process. So if you've never done it, you get an automatic email with a video attached to it every day to walk you through the process. But it's always a good idea to have a good reference book, some material you can look through, and you might find some of the sort of side lights in there interesting as well. So let's put some wire on these posts just to show people the basics of how that's done. We'll just run a couple of them so people get an idea. And then we'll start the conditioning process after that. We're gonna show you guys how to set up a little trellis between these posts. As I mentioned earlier, we put a 2x4 between here to keep these from bending over. But we're just gonna show you, first of all, the type of wire. 14 or 16 gauge fencing wire works really well. You can buy it at any farm supply store. If you buy it on a spool, the unfortunate thing is they make you buy it by the mile. So you're gonna end up with a quarter of a mile. Okay, all we're gonna do is wrap it around the post. So we're gonna shoot for 8 to 10 inches above our bales. And there's a little bit of logic to this, because if you plant the bales early enough in the spring that you may tempt Mother Nature and potential for frost, going 8 to 10 inches above the bales allows us to drape a plastic cover over the top of these bales that we can uncover like a shower curtain. We can fold it to the end during the day, and then should there be a scare of frost at night, we can easily pull that cover over top of the bales, sort of holds in the heat that's going to be being generated by the bales and protects our plants. So we can plant early in the season, earlier than we ever might if we were planting in the soil. Day like today, our soil temps, the lilacs are in bloom, probably our soil temps about 50 degrees. My guess would be 50, 52 maybe. Inside these bales on the last day of conditioning, probably going to be somewhere around between 80 and 100 degrees. So it's like our soil temperatures in the middle of July. Tomatoes and other warm season crops love warm roots. Yes. So it's a big advantage is the warmth that's generated by these bales. Right. But that's kept in by the little covers we put on top. So let's run this wire across here. Then we're just going to put that, try and keep it as close as we can as level here. So it makes sense from the people from the street. That looks like a good height. We won't tighten this up too tight today because it would just bend our posts over. So we'll kind of get it snug, and Glenn can put his 2x4s in here some other day.
Well, it's going to be projects for the week.
Yep. Then we're going to run another one, another 8 or 10 inches up here. So our beans and peas, when we plant those, we might put some little sticks beside them just to guide the plants over to the wire. The ones that are directly underneath it will reach up and grab it, but anything that's planted on the outside edges of the bale might not find that wire. So sometimes we got to guide them over to the wire, and a little red twig dogwood sticks will work great for that. Just to guide them over there. Things like squash and tomatoes, of course, will reach right up and grab a hold of it. And then really the only maintenance you have with this garden is, of course, you got to water. If you don't have an automatic water system set up, you're going to have to water. And then making sure that your vines don't get out of control and go everywhere. You want to guide those up onto the trellis. Or if they do bend over too far, you kind of got to tie them back to the trellis, because tomatoes, once they've grown, you can't really bend them a whole lot. They'll snap right off. So we want to keep them as close as we can to that wire. People will often use cages for tomatoes, obviously. Tomato cage would work fine on top of a bale, but you're going to have a post next to every tomato cage. So if you were to plant one tomato in each bale, now you've got 3 posts in here to hold 3 tomato cages, versus having 2 posts with these wires, which are going to stay in place. You never have to move them. In the future, Glenn could kick these old bales out, and you can always use them a second year and then load new bales in underneath here. So once the trellis is in position, the setup only has to happen once.
Perfect.
Second wire, we're going to measure up about 8 to 10 inches, or 4 bumps on the fence post. This doesn't have to be high precision here. Just get it close. We don't want to separate them too far because it can be hard for the plants to reach up and grab that next wire as they're climbing. So, you know, not too far apart, but 8 to 10 inches is sort of good. This is heavy fencing wire. This must be 14 or is this 12 gauge?
Could be 12.
This could be 12 gauge. This is real thick, nice wire. So once we get it stretched out here, measure across, then the old farmer trick is just to grab the wire with the pliers and bend it back and forth, and it breaks right off. Our Bale Buster product comes in a organic formula that's a 1300, so 13% nitrogen. Mainly it's blood meal, and then it's also got Trichoderma ricci, which is a fungal spore, and it has Bacillus subtilis, which is a bacterial spore, and those are both decomposers. If you look them up, they're fun to Google and look them up. And then the traditional formula, the NPK version, is 3857. We formulated this specifically for straw bale gardening, and it also contains a little bit of blood meal as a carrier for the trichoderma and the bacillus. So they both have the spores in them, which just helps accelerate the decomposition process. Your bales are still going to decompose if you just use regular old lawn fertilizer on them, right, or if you use regular old blood meal with nothing else. This just helps speed up the process a little bit, and it sort of rides along in the bales. You'll see if you price this stuff out, it's very similar in price to what you would go to the store and buy. So we're going to open one of these up and put that on the bales. Did you decide you want to do the organic?
Yeah, let's do organic.
Organic?
That's what
Okay.
this is about, and I'm going to go get the hose. So in all good gardening projects and rejuvenation projects, I spent the morning, because everybody knows that I have the water line here to fix. Well, I went to turn the water line on in the house, and the copper was bad, and so I've replaced the copper and 3 other fittings to get water to the garden today.
Oh goodness.
Just another day.
Just another day. Okay, Glenn, this is our Bale Buster.
Look at that.
See, when you open it up, there's a little instruction sheet that comes in here. Tells you all about the proprietary 100% organic formula. And it gives a chart on the bottom. You can actually cut this off, and if you wanted to bring it to the Office Depot and have it laminated, then you can hang on to it. But it gives you a chart of exactly how much to apply on what days, and walks you through the whole process.
Look at that. And probably put a pin in there and just like it.
There you go. Pin it to your shirt. And then a little promotional insert for the Straw Bale Garden Club as well.
Join the club.
So we stick that in there. And you can see it looks kind of like dirt, but it's actually dried blood. It's porcine. You can see the dog is all excited about it. He smells that porcine dried pig blood is really what it is. And it's the highest source of nitrogen of any organic fertilizer that you'll find is blood meal. It's pure protein, almost pure protein, and protein, 85% protein. Protein converts to nitrogen as it decomposes. So a little chemistry, biology there behind it, but essentially we're going to start out. If you look at our chart, it says 2 cups
and a dozen holes.
We've got the cut side up. These bales are nice and loose. I think we can drive this in, especially this first day, since we're going to put a bunch of water on. So we're not going to worry about the holes today. But if you get to the point where you're trying to put blood meal on and you can't get it to work down into the bales, then making some holes just with a stick, make a few holes in the bale and pour the blood meal down into the bales will help get it down into the interior of the bales. You also notice, Glenn, that about a week from now, it's going to get a little stinky. It's going to get a little stinky. It's decomposing, and decomposing blood, it's going to smell. It's not going to be pretty for a few days, and you'll see some flies and other things, but this is part of natural decomposition. And once it gets past that early decomposition stage, it's beautiful. So people who walk by might smell a little bit, but it goes away after not too long. He says it tastes like what's in my dog food.
How's that taste, Jack?
Yum. Oh, my dog is nuts about it. Leave her alone for 2 seconds, she's got a mouthful of it.
No, silly boy.
Can't eat all our fertilizer.
So is there a magic, I know we talked gallons, is there a magic point when you know you've got enough water running out the bottom?
Yeah, if you see anything coming out the bottom, you kind of know it's pretty much saturated. Probably about 2 minutes or 3 minutes on each bale should be enough. The fertilizer disappears down into the bale and it feels like it's getting wet.
That is really cool. Just driving it down in there.
Yeah, it pretty much disappears down into the bale. Now, by the time you've done your 6th application, which is 9 days from now, you'll start to see a little accumulation on top of the bales, a little sort of a crust. And sometimes that drives people, especially people who are, you know, very attentive to detail. They want to get rid of all that fertilizer down in the bale. And that's not really that important. The bacteria will actually come up through the solution in the bale, and they'll capture the nitrogen off of that fertilizer, even if it's sitting on top of the bales.
Wow.
So it's not super important that it all get washed in. With the organic stuff, my main concern is on washing it in, that it gets a little stinky if you have it up on the surface. So the more you can get it washed into the bale, the less surface area you have, and the less smell you're going to generate to have to deal with.
No worries here.
It's kind of one of those deals where if it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother me. But it will, just as a note, it will get a little smelly.
All right. Well, how about that? We have a big addition to the garden, and I wasn't down on my hands and knees once, so this will be a fun experiment. I know a couple of your videos or things, or testimonials for you were like, yeah, I started with 4 bales and now I have 20. So maybe this will get bigger. I think I'll probably be surprised how much actually comes out of 12 bales in this little corner here.
I think you will be, yeah. People usually are pretty amazed by how productive. And keep in mind, we're going to plant the tops of the bales, and we can also plant the sides. Yes. So herbs and things like that, lettuces, kale. You know, I've even done cabbage in the sides of the bales.
And speaking of planting, so one thing that you do want to do is head to Joel's, not Facebook, but YouTube channel, because he's got a great video there, link up there, about planting straw bales. And he goes through like all the different vegetables and flowers and everything that you can stick in your straw bales. So if you're used to monoculture, kind of like everything in one row has to be the same variety, like we grew up with, you know, we have to have 17 rows of potatoes and 16 rows. Yeah, bringing back those nightmares. But this is more just, oh, he mentioned a little bit. A tomato can be here, stick of marigold here, stick of vine here. One thing that you'll see on there, which I absolutely love, is the peas, the string, you know, the peas that go up. When you plant the whole row and they all come ripe at the same day, that's so many. But if you plant 1 or 2 seeds every 3-4 days, they're going to come ripe every 3-4 days. So when you're out in the garden harvesting or just enjoying with a glass of wine, come out here and just eat your fresh peas instead of having them all ready at one day. I love that.
Peas and red wine, they go great.
Oh, well, red wine goes great with everything, especially beer. So. All right, that's gonna wrap it up here for.
Thanks for having me out. Oh, Glenn.
Yes,
great. Great to see you again. Great to catch up.
I can't thank you enough for sharing.
Sure, great to show your viewers what they can do with the straw bale garden. So.
And hopefully we'll have you back at some point just to check in
great.
And see what we're doing. Thanks everybody for following along at Home in the Garden with Glenn, and today, Joel. Yeehaw!